What's up, guys? Welcome to Daily Dose of Reddit. This is your host that is finally playing through The Last of Us. I know, I'm very late. Zach, and today's subreddit is r/ProRevenge. And yes, it's because I got The Last of Us Part 2 today, and I want to play through it, but I had to play through the first one to get to the right emotional state. And then I also have to play through Sleeping Dogs because I'm part of this revival club thing where we play older games, and then I still have to beat the Valkyrie Queen in God of War. Alright, this story's called Manipulative, Power-Hungry Aunt Torments My Family for Years. Cost her $300,000. Dealt with my crappy, manipulative, prone to cruel treatment aunt all my life. Finally got revenge. Here are the players. There's myself, male, late 30s, my sister, 3 years younger, aunt, older sister to my mother, a single mom, adopted, no blood relation to my aunt, cousins, 3 total, 1 male, 2 female. I have good relationships with them now, mostly. My estranged father, who had been living several counties over, is pretty much out of the picture by the time my parents got their divorce when I was 9. Due to financial hardship, we were forced to live with my aunt, and the nightmare of a household we would soon find ourselves in. My aunt married into Georgia wealth, and you can figure out what that means on your own. She had 3 kids and eventually caught her husband having an affair. It's a huge scandal. She gets the house, the kids, and a fat payout from the family attorney. This is important because my aunt didn't do a damn thing in her life to earn her money, her house, her lifestyle, or basically anything. She was born poor along with my mom. Under her household, she was drunk with power. Years of therapy have allowed me to recognize that certain people, when in a position of power, get a perverse pleasure in ordering others to do their bidding. She was the strictest of authoritarians in every possible way you can imagine. Chores had to be completed by an exact specific time. Vacuuming by 3:45 p.m., dishes by 3:55 p.m. Laundry days for my mother, us kids, were Tuesday and Thursday, 5:35 p.m. to 7:55 p.m. If it was still running, she would shut the power off for the 2 units. As we grew older, her own kids opted to stay with their father for full-time custody, and she had them on weekends. Even they couldn't stand her when she was in charge and in the house. As time passed, she got them less and less, opting for alternating weekends as high school activities took precedence over time with mother. For my sister and I, the large 6-bedroom house was not ours for the taking. My mom had to pay rent, as well as rent for 1 bedroom, as that was all she could afford on her salary. We had to share a bedroom until my 2nd year of high school. All the while, there was 1 spare unused bedroom available at all times. My aunt needed this for guests when they stayed over. Not 1 guest stayed there in the 10 years I was under that roof. Finally, the church we attended told my aunt to give up the spare bedroom so my sister can have her own room, as it was unhealthy for 2 teenagers sharing a room together like that. That infuriated my aunt because someone told her what to do in her own household. My sister and I got the brunt of her wrath. As my mom's salary was tapped out, my sister and I had to do extra chores like mowing the lawn, trimming the shrubs, cleaning the pool, which we could no longer use without her being outside watching us. My aunt's behavior was becoming more and more outrageous and disconnected from society. For example, she had always snapped her fingers when she wanted to get someone's attention, but it was getting far more frequent, and she would blow up into a tirade if either my sister or I didn't obey her. Her own kids tried repeatedly to tell her that the crap she was doing was wrong, but she wouldn't listen. Eventually, they wanted nothing to do with her outside of the home. She was a tyrant there, and repeated intervention to get her to see the folly of her ways would fall on deaf ears. I snapped. All through high school, I had no confidence as a person. I was weak-willed and growing ever distant from friends and society. I say this in all truthfulness and fear, that had circumstances continued the way they had been going, I could very well have taken a gun to myself, or worse, to others around me. I was that bad off. I had just graduated high school and started my first semester of community college. I'm 2 weeks into my classes, attending from home, when my aunt drops a bomb on me. You owe me $100 for this month's rent, the same amount for next month's rent as well. It is the 27th after all. You're an adult now. You're out of high school and working now, so you need to pay rent. The fornication under consent of the king? I blew a freaking gasket as I yelled back. You can't just suddenly decide to charge me rent just because you feel like it. I need 30 days notice. I have rights. My aunt yelled at me some bullcrap excuse that she had discussed this with my mother and it was decided that I needed to pay my own rent now. In some miraculous backbone move, of which I still have no idea how I stood up to her, I yelled right back at her. If I'm an adult, then treat me like one and talk to me about rental agreements. I'll start paying you rent in 30 days, starting the 1st. I turned my back to her and walked away with my fists balled tight. I was furious with anger, but I walked away. My aunt saw my fist from behind and screamed bloody murder that I was going to attack her. No, I wasn't. She snapped her fingers at me repeatedly on my tail to get my attention, but I didn't turn around. I needed to cool off and clear my head. As I turned the corner, she grabbed my wrist hard, yelling, "I'm not finished talking to you!" I threw my still balled-up fist forward, keeping with my stride to break her grip, as I hadn't stopped my momentum. This caused her grabbing arm to slam hard into the corner of the wall that I had just turned into. She screamed in pain, but I left the house and took off. The aftermath of that incident was that my aunt called the cops on me in an attempt to press charges. She was taken to the hospital and suffered a fractured wrist, and she was put in a cast or sling. I don't know, as I never saw it and never inquired further. Her story changed every time she told the cops what happened, while my story was spot on every time. I can still recall that moment down to the smell in the house, where I was facing, the working and non-working light bulbs, etc. Forever ingrained in me. I was kicked out of the house and I couldn't visit my sister or my mom there at the house again. Fine by me, as I didn't want to see my rude aunt ever again. I was happy to meet my mother and sister at the local diner or outlet. We could be ourselves there and not hostages in our own home. Years later, my mom wised up and got out of that cruel relationship with her sister and moved out on her own. She got a temporary nice place, invested wisely, and with help from the church, got help getting a place of her own. In 2009, after the housing crisis, she bought her own place that she could never have afforded on her own prior to the market crash. But some good came out of it. She wept knowing my sister and her family and myself can come visit any time and stay. Over the years, I've been able to forgive my aunt. Not forget, forgive. I've let go of a lot of my anger and hatred toward her. When she has no leverage or control over us, she's a somewhat decent person for being a total horrible person. My cousins have calmed down, heard my side of what happened those years ago, and know what kind of person I am compared to what kind of person their mother is. They chose to believe me and know I didn't hit or strike her or beat her across the face like she continues to claim. The revenge. While I have been able to forgive my aunt for what she's done to me, I cannot forgive her for what she did to my mother. Kept her in financial hardship for a decade while she sat on a bank account full of cash and assets. Or what she did to my sister. Forced her to pay for damages because the water heater burst while my aunt and mother were away one weekend, leaving my sister at home. She didn't discover the flooded rooms for hours. My aunt's reasoning? It was her responsibility to watch the house, not the responsibility of the homeowner to maintain or replace the water heater before it goes. Let's leave that upfront $5,000 financial burden before the flood insurance kicks in on a 16-year-old girl. I've had little to no contact with my aunt since I was kicked out of the house nearly 2 decades ago. But I do keep in constant contact with my cousins. While I'm not going to divulge what I do for a living, I can say that I work with and for the government. I've worked my ass off getting to where I'm at today. I'm known for being truthful, wise, and giving good advice when asked. Because of this, I often talk financially with my cousins, all of whom are money smart and are doing well for themselves. They often then relay this information to their scheming mother who has no mind for business and investments. All that money she got from her house sale, her divorce settlement, her previous investments is pretty much gone. I spent years planning on the perfect trap, and it took a long time to prepare everything to make sure everything appeared right. I am not a lawyer and I don't pretend to know the law, but I do know the regulations and laws pertaining to insider information. This is not that. 100% certain of it, and if I ever go to court, I know my lawyer has a solid case in my defense. But is this a gray area? Definitely. I let slip to my cousins about future real estate plans near my aunt's new area of living. It may be worth a lot more because of future development taking place in that area. A lot of that was true and backed up by what was in the newspaper and new construction signs that newly appeared on Google Maps at the time. The rest was fabricated by myself, backed up by actual information I looked up on real estate websites and on projects I was working on through my work. The telephone game takes place, and a few weeks later, I presume, my aunt starts making phone calls to real estate agents trying to buy lots of land in the underdeveloped, crappy area of her new house. Over the course of a few months to half a year, she spends $300,000 of her last remaining savings on land, hoping it will pay out when the area around it gets developed in the upcoming years. Only HUD Government City doesn't have plans to develop in those immediate areas. In fact, analysis showed that building in those areas was poor planning and would cost the taxpayers 2 to 3 times as much, as the land was not environmentally sound. It was best to build 6 miles away. This post was long overdue because it's been over 2 years since my aunt purchased land that is basically worthless. See, she won't sell the land unless she gets at least the same price she paid for it, because she's the owner of that land. Can't tell her what to do on her own land. Sweet karma strikes in a way I couldn't possibly have foreseen. My cousin informed me that the value of the land has decreased significantly because it's not environmentally sound to build anything commercial there, but it's zoned for commercial use. Currently, 3 of the 4 blocks of land she purchased are just weed farms next to eyesore abandoned buildings or industrial complexes. Nobody can build on it, and nor does anyone want to buy it. Sucks to be her. Best part is, my cousins have absolutely no idea that I set them up for their mother to take the fall. These environmental results are relatively new and the perfect way to cover why the project changed locations 6 miles away. Yeah, okay, so it's one thing to take bad advice from someone, but it's another thing to just absolutely blindly trust that information and not try to look into it yourself, especially when it's your last 300 grand. Also, why would you invest your last 300 grand in one place? Come on, lady. She had so much money, she should have just hired a financial advisor. Oh my goodness. Okay, so ProRevenge didn't really have any news stories, so our last story is going to be from r/neckbeard stories. And it's called, You Can't Go to Japan. In my school, it was a small school, everyone knows each other to some degree. There was this one kid who everyone knows and was infamous in the school. He would constantly flirt with girls and would make the girls weirded out by how he would act and what he would say. Do nice things and expect a blowy in return, and other stuff like that. The only thing keeping me from calling him a neckbeard is the fact that he is really religious. He was a total weeb. He would always wear anime shirts. Some were legit hentai, read manga in the classroom, and took our high school Japanese class so he can watch anime without reading the subtitles. He failed the class because he didn't take it seriously. Ironic. The few times I was teamed up with him, we talked for a bit about anime in Japan and other stuff like that. But as soon as the conversation turned into anything that wasn't about anime or Japan, he would always respond with, I guess, to the few times I was teamed up with him for group projects. He told multiple different kids that he was Japanese when he was a pure Afghan, and would try to speak Japanese but would make himself look stupid. My school was an early college school, and since my school was linked up with a college, once a year during the summer, the school would have a study abroad trip to a different country for college credits, for 2 weeks for juniors going into their senior year. Some of the past countries were Spain, England, and Iceland. That year, the year I was in, the country on the list was Japan. When they announced the list to everyone, I wanted to go. You had to have requirements met in order for you to go on the trip, such as a certain GPA and cough up the money. Granted, the money you'd cough up would pay for the hotel rooms, travel, etc. So it was worth it. He also wanted to go, but instead of doing anything like trying to get a good grade, he'd skip class and stay in the hallway watching anime with no headphones on and blast Japanese music. Throughout the whole year, he wouldn't do anything. No helping out with the fundraiser or fundraising, not doing any work, not even giving in money from what I understand. The list of kids that were picked for going to Japan was selected, and I was on that list. I was ecstatic because I worked my ass off to get in and it paid off. But he wasn't on that list. When he found out he wasn't selected to go to Japan, he flipped out and had a temper tantrum about how he didn't get selected. He turned his anger on me and started yelling at the top of his lungs, "You can't go to Japan! You probably don't even watch anime! Why are you going to Japan?" After the principal pulled him away, I just started laughing because I didn't know what to do. After that, there really isn't much to say, although he still posts about this on social media to this day, after 2 years went by. People like that are why I'm always afraid to say I want to go to Japan, because I did not want to seem like that kind of person despite having a genuine interest in Japan. I don't care about that anymore. I'll say I want to go if I want to go. And I do want to go because Japan's great. But that fella, he's the reason that I used to be scared to say stuff like that. Just someone get this guy a body pillow with a cleverly placed hole somewhere. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit that bell to never miss an episode.